T-minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hi, everybody. I'm hoping you can hear me well. If not, I'm going to try to adjust my volume on the stream. We're kind of doing a sound check. Is that better or about the same?
Hang on, 1 sec. I'm gonna mute myself and I will check on my laptop how you sound.
Okay, cool.
Keep talking.
Okay, you guys. And while you're doing that, I'm going to check our comments to make sure that our comments are rolling in. We're having a bit of technical difficulties today, but we are making sure that
Okay, you good?
Am I? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
you good on my laptop. I guess it's just StreamYard or me being a deaf bitch.
You're so silly. Let me see. Let me make sure our stream is rolling in the right places. We are streaming to our page and to our Duncan Religion YouTube. So you guys make sure you go ahead and subscribe, and you'll get notifications of when we go live.
Yeah.
We got a good show for everybody, right?
We definitely do.
All right. So where do you want to start? Because we're talking to first of all, this is Pride Month. So we're going to be talking about Pride all week. Molly actually has some clips she wants to show us, and I have a few questions, Molly. So maybe we can I can
Sure.
ask you those questions on the stream. Hopefully, I don't get people get mad at me because let me just tell. Yeah, well, my background is that I was a former Jehovah's Witness. I also was in a fundamentalist Christian denomination. I was evangelical. So my ideas about LGBTQIA community, as well as homosexuality, trans, all of the spectrum, all of the things in between, is being stretched every day. I'm learning something new every day. So if you're a person that wants to be an ally but don't have a lot of information, you might want to just look at this screen. And Molly's going to be helping us out today with some questions and hopefully some hot topics. If you got some hot questions you want to ask, this is the time to ask. If you always want to know.
Step up, everyone.
Okay, so let's get started. What do you want to start with, your first clip? Or do you want to start with JK Rowling?
Let's start with the clips, I guess, because.
Okay, so do you want me to play the first one? Just play the first one now, or you give us commentary? Okay.
Remain silent in the churches. Doesn't seem to me like good moral advice. The Bible suggests that those who divorce and remarry should be put to death. Why? Well, because the New Testament defines divorce as adultery. The Old Testament prescribes death for adultery. Again, this doesn't sound very good. The Bible suggests that slavery is morally acceptable. People don't believe me when I tell them this.
And can you play the second, because that's pertaining to this?
There are just too many gaps in this argument. The argument seems to assume all homosexual sex is risky, all risky activity is immoral.
That's not the right one?
Yeah,
I'll try another one.
Yeah.
It
Sorry.
was so nice, we have great conversations, but the spark's just not there. I mean,
okay. Well, let's play. We have been working on the clips before we came in here, so let's replay the first one, and we'll just talk about the clips as we go to them because they're not in order.
Remain silent in the churches. Doesn't seem to me like good moral advice. The Bible suggests that those who divorce and remarry should be put to death. Why? Well, because the New Testament defines divorce as adultery. The Old Testament prescribes death for adultery. Again, this doesn't sound very good. The Bible suggests that slavery is morally acceptable. People don't believe me when I tell them this.
These sound very familiar to some of the reasonings I used to have. As far as the Old Testament, I mean, I didn't even realize that the Old Testament actually did put you to death for adultery, whereas the new one didn't. It just kind of said, uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So go ahead, Molly.
So yeah, basically he's explaining how it's not moral because Bible argument is not really let's say not really valid because and religious people hate me when I say this, but look, a book that condones slavery it's not a book that I want to base my morality around. So yeah, and that doesn't just apply to the Bible. That applies to the Quran. That applies to the Torah because the Torah is basically the Old Testament, but just a bit more spicy, I guess. Uh, and the Quran is the Quran is the Quran. It's even spicier in um, every slave on your right hand you can actually just have as sex slaves, and every other one you can just have as slaves. It's a whole shebang. So anyway,
Well, Christians usually say when it comes to, okay, well, the Bible doesn't endorse slavery. It
mhm,
just took, monitored it or made sure that it was fair. But at the same time, you would think that a God who slavery is no longer an acceptable form of at least that type of slavery. It's no longer a acceptable form even in our society. There are some societies that still are in indentured service, but then you have human rights groups who talk about the fact that even that sometimes in certain areas could be exploitive. So
mm,
a God who, and then a lot of people think when we're talking about slavery, we're talking about American slavery. When I read
mm,
those passages, I don't think of American slavery. I think of the fact that somebody is enslaved, period. So a
right,
God who is progressive, you would think would not just legislate slavery, but would outlaw it, and
right,
come up with something different for people to be able to, make money and because there are
right,
certain passages in the Bible that didn't allow you. Okay, then there's passages where slaves are allowed to leave, but it's only after 7 years of service. Their
yeah,
families are enslaved, and then they do have the option to stay. But if slavery is all that and this is what your livelihood is, um, why?
you're
I
not
mean,
gonna leave,
you're not going to leave. And why would
right,
Paul or any apostle have to tell people not to beat slaves? Obviously, because it was going on.
right. And also about slavery, Hungary actually is one of the worst countries to be a worker in Europe because we have a lot of black work, like dirty work happening. And I almost got contracted like that once. It means that you are not reported, you are not insured, they don't pay taxes after you don't pay taxes. If they find out, you're fucked. So that's basically slavery because you don't have an option to speak out about it. You don't have an option to really do much if you're mistreated at work because what you're gonna say, you don't have a you don't have a contract with the government that they have to protect and insure you. And also, if you have to monitor something, you endorsed it. Like say here, I don't have to monitor my you know I don't have to monitor my rabbits and how many chemicals they eat because it's bad for them. Point blank, they don't have chemicals around. I hide all the chemicals between like two shelves and two cupboards so that they don't reach it. It's a stupid example, but it's the same. If I however monitor how many fruits they get. See the difference? Something is obviously bad and deadly and harmful, so I don't let them have it. And then something is good in moderation, so I let them have it. But there's nothing good in slavery. So
Definitely some people might compare some employee contracts to slavery, forms of slavery. I mean, you have like child slavery. Nike does that
Right.
with their shoes. You have people who there are different forms of it, but none of it has good connotations to it. I've never heard
Mm,
somebody say, "Hey, yeah, I would love to be a slave." It's just no matter how Christians try to spin it, the Bible endorses slavery. It truly does.
right.
I mean, if it doesn't condemn it, if it is just legislating it, between you
Just
still have
condone.
a uneven, yeah, it's condoning it. If you have an uneven relationship between the master and the slave, I mean, for some simple fact that again you have to tell. So why are we talking about slavery in the context of gay? Well, we are. This is Pride Month. We're talking about it because this particular
Yeah, no,
video actually talks about whether or not homosexuality is moral. And I think
yeah.
we talked
This
about in our
video.
first. Oh, hang on one second. We talked about in our first part whether or not it's a moral question at all. So in this particular video, it goes a little further. Go ahead, Molly.
Yeah. In this, like, this is a 1.5 hour long lecture this guy gave, and this is a section that I like because if you're gonna bring up how the Bible designs your morality, then you cannot ignore the fact that the Bible, if not endorses and encourages slavery, but it accepts it. So are you gonna tell me that a book that accepts a human being sold and beaten, and I think it's beaten to the point where in 3 days they can walk again. It's something like that. Google is your friend. I'm not a Bible, so sorry, I don't know the exact passage, but it says something like you can, and if he or she walks within 3 days, you're good, or something like that. Or if they don't die within 3 days, you're without sin, or something like that. So it's like, whoa, what? And so yeah, I wanted to have that here because I think it's important to note that the Bible is not necessarily the best guide for morality.
Here's the next clip that you have here. It's not in order, but we'll go ahead and
Okay.
discuss it. Here we go.
There are just too many gaps in this argument. The argument seems to assume all homosexual sex is risky.
Wait a minute. That looks like it's jumping too far, huh? Let's try.
We're so nice, we have great conversations, but the spark's just not there. I mean, we don't have that kind of direct control over our feelings. But if we don't have that kind of direct control over our feelings for particular individuals, why would anyone think that we would have that sort of control over our feelings toward men in general or women in general? And why would anyone choose to be gay in a society that stigmatizes homosexuality? It just doesn't stand to reason.
Yep.
I
Thank
like
you.
that.
I don't
I mean,
really
I
have
don't.
much to say about it.
You really can't say it any better than what he already did. I mean, nobody choose. No, why would anybody choose to be homosexual? I mean, in a environment where it's stigmatized, people are getting killed. People get killed over it. People are suicidal over their identity because the society tells you that it's wrong or you're you're out of place or somehow or another that you're other. And when people start to
Right.
paint you as other, it's very easy for them to dehumanize you in a way and that you become no longer human. And this
Right.
is
And
why this happens.
also, do you like, as chirpy and witty I am about my not being straight at this point because, well, I made my peace. But real talk, when when I was a JW and when I didn't know what this whole thing was, I used to have panic attacks about the single thought of someone like having a crush on me because I was like, oh no, 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 they are gonna want to have sex with me. And I didn't know that that was just like, oh, okay, I'm asexual. Ha, good. I was like, what kind of fucking freak am I to be like, this obsessed but this repulsed by the idea of sex. And then I was like, oh, wait, this label exists. That's cool. And by the way, to be candid, at first I started my, as a JW, you have no option really.
Yeah.
Heterosexual, cisgender, boom, done. Yeah, good. But when I woke up, I was like, huh, I still really don't want to have sex because when I was a JW, I thought it was the indoctrination.
Hmm.
But then I was like, okay, well, no, I'm done with the indoctrination. I'm just, uh, like, okay, no, that's,
That's
I mean,
very interesting that Jehovah's Witnesses don't allow, obviously, for a spectrum of sexuality, no more than the Christians do. I mean, you either, like you
right,
said, cisgender or and you're straight. That is just simply it. So the idea of not even wanting sex in a Jehovah Witness worldview is crazy because they push it. Like you have to render your spouse their
yes,
due, and it's
too
almost
weird.
how can I say it? It's almost
Mhm.
they say it so much that it's first of all, Jehovah Witnesses talk about sex a lot. Okay, so
That's what I wanted to say.
yeah,
I wanted to say that as much as like, oh, we're holy and pure, they are like so fucking obsessed with sex. It's like you're worse than Pornhub, okay? Pornhub is not that obsessed with sex. Like, why? Just why? And that drove me like off the walls. I was like miserable. And then when I woke up, I had my, I met my gay best friend, and I was like, oh, wait, this bitch knows about like gender and stuff. That's interesting. And then, we talked, and he was like, aren't you asexual? And I'm like, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, this. And I'm like, oh. And then, we kept talking, and he's like, you know, just for caution, because you recently woke up from a cult, uh, he was like, maybe for now, don't close off from the option that you might like sex. And I was like, yeah, that sounds reasonable. I mean, he wasn't like, you have to have sex to know. He was like, well, if it arises that you might feel that way about someone, don't say, oh no. He was like reasonable about it. It was like, yeah, maybe you have to like figure it out, deprogram a little more. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's actually reasonable. So I first identified as demisexual, which is on the asexual spectrum, and it means that you, as a person, only want sex when you and your partner are very connected and when certain criteria are met. Say, in certain times, when certain, like, it's like, yeah, I want sex, but only when certain things are certain criteria, like a checkbox, tick 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 tick, okay, we can have sex now. And then I was like, okay, no. I'm like, no, because I realized, oh no, someone has a crush on me. And I was like, oh, screw that. I'm like, no, please don't leave me alone with him because he has a crush on me. And it's gonna be like, he will try to flirt or ask me on a date, and I'm like, "Mm." And he was like, yeah, you're an asexual. And I was like, yeah, you're an asexual girl. It's
I
for me
think
to
with
decide.
me, I think that my first beginnings of wanting to be an ally is because I felt um I just felt my heart went out to my hairdresser. I think I've told you this story before,
Yeah,
but
I think you mentioned this
for
in
the
previous too.
audience that may have not heard it, um, I think that was the beginnings of me realizing that there was a whole nother world out there that I didn't know about, a whole nother side to him, and a whole nother struggle that I did not understand. And he was just so vocal about the fact, and I was so just naive and just so just thinking I could offer him the Jehovah Witness tropes and answers to be able to resolve. Because, we always feel like we have the answer for everything. But he literally told me that, yeah, I don't, for me, I'm just being told to just get married. I literally don't
Mm.
have an attraction to the opposite sex. Like I am attracted to my own gender, and to even
Right.
ask me to do that, he was just describing how it just killed a little bit of him every day. And then on top of that,
Mm.
he on top of the stigma of being a homosexual within the Jehovah's Witnesses, there were people, the Jehovah's Witnesses, that would not allow him to come over their house to play with their sons. They were extra cautious with their children with him out in service, as if he was some type of wayward, like a pedophile. Something was really horrible the way they treated him. And then on top of that, I felt like, you know, the only thing I wanted to do was just be a good friend, but I didn't realize that I
Mhm.
was inflicted some of the same harm just because of me being uneducated. But
Right.
it took for him to actually say take out the time to educate me,
Mhm.
taking a risk that I was not a homophobe, which in a lot of ways I grew up that way because my parents were that way. But I think that that was the first time I had a glimpse of
Mhm.
not what it was like to be a only a Jehovah's Witness, a gay Jehovah's Witness, but being a Jehovah's Witness who was fully indoctrinated and trying to find a path within the Jehovah's Witnesses where you could have companionship and have love and
Right.
acceptance. And this is common things that every human wants. I
Mhm.
mean, it's just that the witnesses were telling him that he couldn't have a certain way. And then on top of that, we found out that he had AIDS, which is a stigma on top of a stigma. And then
Mhm.
nobody wanted to actually like be around him, touch it was horrible. And then on top of it, I think that within the Black community, I know so, it's even worse to come out as gay because no one in the Black community, you cannot come out as gay in our community and not get some type of backlash or being threatened in some way. I know, I've seen it, I see it all day long. And the thing of the matter is that what I'm realizing is not just enough to be an ally, you have to also be anti-homophobic, which means that you
Yeah.
have to speak up for people who are being disenfranchised. It's almost, I don't like to compare it with a civil rights struggle of Black people, but it's almost very
It
similar
kinda
in
is.
that.
It kinda is.
But
And also that.
well, I just let me just finish this. I didn't. The reason why I won't compare it to that is because for me personally, um, you look it, there. It's been a. I mean, I think a lot of people in our country have benefited from the civil rights struggle here in
Right.
America. I mean, me looking a certain way, I can't, change the way I look no more than a gay
Right.
person can change who they're attracted to. At the same time, I do think gay struggles and homosexual their rights, they have a history within their own self that needs to be brought to the forefront. You've helped me appreciate that there is a rich history, and most of it begins here in America, but that
Yeah,
of gay
actually,
rights and stuff.
it does. It really does. But also, it's not just not just homophobia. It's also I call it queer phobia. I don't know if that term already was utilized and penned. I just call it queer phobia. But either way, the point of it all is that, for example, I'm an asexual, and the most common thing that I get is either you just didn't have good dick yet, which is like, can we not do that? And the other is like, oh, it's just like women are supposed to be asexual. Women are supposed to not like that. So you're normal. Or even from the queer community has a very aggressive attitude towards aromantics and asexuals, saying that we're basically just straight, which is not true because, in all honesty, I think that I'm a very like sapphic leaning person. Like I prefer the way women sound, the way women look, the way women just feel in their presence, in their essence. And that's there are feminine men, there are masculine women. Duh, I know. I'm one of the masculine women, so I know. But the point is, there is a feel to women that I just love, but I could not have sex with a person. So it's not like, oh yeah, I'm just not interested in sex and that's it. It's really a thing that actually led me to be in an abusive relationship. He knew I was asexual and he tried to actually force me to be sexual when in the beginning I explicitly said I'm asexual, I'm never gonna have sex. And he forced me to either way, or he woke me up by inserting shit or fingering me, and I was like, no dude, that's that's basically called corrective rape. Let's be real, that's what it's called. Yeah, and it exists toward mainly lesbians and asexuals, because men, straight men, think that their dick is just so powerful that it's gonna just change your world. And actually, first of all, very fucking traumatic. And then second of all, it's very scary because and then after I exited that relationship and I found, a living situation and work, I had a guy hit on me there, and I told him, quit it. It's not happening. I'm asexual. And he kept pushing and pushing and pushing, saying that I have just not been fucked right, basically. He did not say that, but
I've heard
the gist
people,
of it.
men say that before about
And
women. Yeah.
I'm like, no, can we not? Like, it's not a decision. And actually, a good asexual channel is called the Slice of Ace. He has very cool and funny videos about asexuality and the ace and aromantic spectrum,
Okay.
which is very cool in my opinion. And I'm also aromantic, so I just don't care about relationships. So if you plan to flirt with me, most likely I will either just say, thank you, and move on, or it will just completely go like way over my head. Usually that's what happens, and people are like,
Oh, you got a couple more clips here.
yeah,
You want to play the next one?
yeah.
I'll read to you. This is from Leviticus chapter 25, verses 44 to 46. You may buy male and female slaves from among the nations that are round about you. You may also buy from among the strangers who sojourn with you, and their families that are with you, who have been born in your land, and they may be your property.
Okay, we kind of went over this already.
Yeah.
Whether or
Second
not
part.
the Bible can be considered a moral guide when it includes passages like that. Here's another one.
But there's too many gaps in this argument. The argument seems to... So then, the other possibility when they say it's a choice is that they mean the activity is chosen. And if that's what they mean, there's only one appropriate response. Duh, yeah. It's a technical philosophical term. You can write that down. Yeah, the activity is chosen. You don't just sort of wake up and find yourself, oh, I'm living with this person. How interesting. No, you make choices. But that doesn't say anything about whether it's a good choice or a bad choice, a natural choice or an unnatural choice in the relevant.
That's a really good good way to express that particular point. I've heard that point made before, but I've never heard it expressed in quite that way. I do want to address one of the comments that we have here. I don't even know if I should or not, but we were actually just talking about this. Asexual, LOL, get you a strong black man, you're going to change your perception of sex. This is the type of comments that we were actually just discussing. Uh, your dick, you want to have sex with somebody that don't. How would that change a person that's asexual or not?
Also, can I just say to straight men or people who think their genitals are just so powerful that they can like make fucking Christ return. Look, you guys, do you realize that I'm an asexual? I don't want to have sex. Sex to me looks like this. It's boring. It's bland. It's like get me out of here. This is not pleasurable. This is not convenient. This is not something I want. This is very awkward. This is very stressful. This is just like
Well, can I just say that I think it's kind of as to me, it's pretty gross that guys think that they can actually have sex with anybody because just because your person is not sexual or aromantic, asexual, it does not mean that they haven't had good sex. That's what you're implying. Okay, it's just it's if you have been listening to the program, I don't even know if Molly can explain it over and over and over again. But maybe we could he said maybe you haven't been loved right, it will come naturally with the right one. Or maybe she's
no.
just asexual or aromantic. I don't
I
know.
I, I
Why
mean,
do you think men have a hard time with women just who are not sexual or don't want
because
sex? For some
they think that that dick is just that powerful. But also, can I just say it's creepy that a woman says, "I am repulsed by sex," and then you still find the guts to say that you haven't been fucked right, and that I could do you better or something like that. I mean, what? That's
well, I mean, and then on top of that, just because you're not sexually, I mean, because you haven't had sex with this person, that means that all of a sudden you gonna rock their world. I mean, what makes men think that they feel like that? You know what I'm saying? Number one, that they can. Number one, to me, after listening to you earlier, I'll just say that consent goes with in all types of relationships, not just you know gay and lesbian, LGBTQIA type
yeah.
relationships. It's heterosexual too. I mean, in a marriage, there is a certain amount of you have to have consent. You just can't jump on top of me, and even if we're married. But
And
there are some states that even have called it marital rape. Just
that's how
because
it is.
we're in a marriage don't mean you have a right to my body.
That's still my body, and like I feel like, especially if, and I know that this specific person is religious, so I'm gonna be an asshole right now, just like you were, and say and ask you a question: is the Bible the only thing holding you back from raping people? Because what you just said is borderline rapey, and I'm not even exaggerating. That what you describe here is corrective rape, and I'm trying to think about the states in the US where it's actually illegal to do that.
He's actually from Nigeria and his background is a Jehovah's Witness. So I don't even know.
Hmm.
I think it's even. I
I
mean,
know
it's
it's
great that he's even
I
watching our
know
program. But I mean,
I
yeah, that is
know it's
kind of
JW. That's
right.
why I said, is the Bible the only thing holding you back from being a rapist now?
Well, if you need the Bible to tell you not to rape or not to steal or not to murder, then you're probably not a moral person in the beginning, in the front to begin with.
Mhm. Or
So
for the Brooklyn Nine-Nine cats, Bing Pot.
I had to watch the Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I haven't watched it in a while. I need something to make me laugh.
I love that.
Here's our last clip, and then we are going to go on to JK Rowling, who has been making some noise over the last 24 hours on Twitter, honey. So here we go. Here's the last clip, I think.
So then, the other part, there are just too many gaps in this argument. The argument seems to assume all homosexual sex is risky, all risky activity is immoral, therefore all homosexual sex is immoral. That argument falls apart in two places, the first premise and the second premise. They're both false as written. Some homosexual sex is risky, some is not. Some heterosexual sex is risky. Some activities that are not sexual at all are risky.
That just gave me one of those, because I want somebody to actually say that homosexual sex is riskier than heterosexual sex now, because at some point I know, like I said, it's a journey for me. I totally believe that, Molly. And then it's no more riskier than heterosexuals who have risky sex.
Right. I mean, I know it's not funny, but at the same time, we know the Mormons be stupid as hell. But let me tell you what, the Mormons are still out here teaching that if two gay men or gay women have gay sex, like, either way, if they have gay sex, then AIDS is created, even if it's not there. That's what the Mormons be teaching me. I'm like,
but you know what? You're right. It's not funny but at the same time, you almost have to see how ridiculous it is, because I know, like here, like I said with my friend, the stigma that he had just from having AIDS, as if it was a gay man's disease. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that, growing up.
And there's a good series about that. It's called Pause. And well, that series, first of all, because I gonna have to upraise all the queens and kings of the queer community, because especially because they Black Lives Matter and Black Voices Matter and Brown Voices Matter, and that series is all Black and brown main characters and trans characters. And I'm just like, yes, God exists, and that's his perfect creation, that cast right there. So basically, it starts with a trans woman being diagnosed with AIDS, and it followed her process through AIDS and the ballroom scene. And what's crazy is actually the fact that Ryan Murphy, he's a gay man. He's the director and the writer and the producer of this series.
Okay.
And the cast is a bunch of Black transgender and genderqueer people, and a bunch of lesbians and bisexuals and gays. And it's basically, it doesn't have any white people, which I just love. As much as I am white, but I'm friends with white people, y'all. So thank you. No white people. Thank you. And basically, it pays homage to what went down right after Stonewall, basically. It starts in 1999. No, 1989.
What's the name of the series so I can link it again? Link it before. I'm sorry. I'm gonna link it below. It's called Pose.
Yeah, and it also stars an XJW who is called India Moore. She no, not she. You see, when I have issue with that, they play Angel because she's non-binary, honey, and she that they are non-binary. You see, when I have even I have to fix myself sometimes because I don't interact with too many non-binary folks who use the they pronouns. So anyway, they are an XJW. They were kicked out at 15 and lived on the streets, and actually the ballroom scene raised them. And so these people got hired for this project. Those who were actually adopted by the queer ballroom scene. And that scene is actually where most of the queer language comes from if you speak English. Say honey, girl, slay, snatched, all that. It comes from the Latino and the black trans activists of the 80s. So
So I linked the series here below if you guys want to take a look at it. Um, on it's I guess season 2 is just dropped or something like that. I'm looking at Netflix here. So now we got about 20 minutes left. So let's take a look at what is the stir on Twitter with JK Rowling, which this is not the first time that she has said some problematic things.
perhaps.
So I don't know if you can see it here, but here is her tweet. If sex isn't real, there is no same sex attraction. If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth. The idea that women like me, who have been empathetic to trans people for decades, feeling kinship because they're vulnerable in the same way as women to male violence, hate trans people because they think sex is real and has lived consequences is nonsense. And the last one here, let's see here. She had a lot to say. I'll put it that way. Let's see, where is it?
Oh yeah.
Uh Oh, here it is. I respect every trans person's right to live any way that feels authentic and comfortable to them. I'd march with you if you were discriminated against on the basis of being trans. But at the same time, my life has been shaped by being female. I do not believe it's hateful to say so. So I learned a new word. It's called turf. Is it turf? Turf,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Trans exclusionary radical feminist. And now, first of all, I love the Harry Potter series. Second of all, um, do I think that trans women and cis women don't have the same experience? No, doy, obviously. And I will say we because I actually am not cisgender. If I haven't mentioned yet, I identify as a gender. I just don't care. If you take my boobs, if you make my boobs bigger, if you give me a dick, if you take you, whatever. I'm cool. I'm chill. I'm just like okay, fine, whatever. If you would say you can't wear makeup anymore or you can't wear skirts anymore or whatever, I'm cool. I'm not feminine. I'm not masculine. I'm whatever the fuck I feel that day.
So how
Basically,
so I at the risk of putting myself out here, on some level, I do understand what she's trying to express. But can you explain why that is problematic? Because what she's trying to separate, because she even said in one tweet, well, what about the women who have administration? Like to try to separate them away, separate those women who have administration versus those who have trans women. And people just went nuts online. This is like her first time or first rodeo about making comments like this. So I'm gonna ask you, as a member of the LGBTQIA community, why are some having a hard time with her expressing that biological women have a different struggle than those who are trans?
I mean, look, even biological women, like even those who are assigned female at birth, even some of them don't menstruate for various reasons. So a menstruation and the capability to give birth does not define a woman. What about infertile women? Uh, what about intersex people who identify as women? Like, there is a condition where you're born with both genitals, and some of those people decide to keep both, but they still identify as female. Some of those people decide to transition to one of the genders, and they might usually they don't have the capability of bearing a child or menstruating
I definitely
because
understand that because bearing a child, because I know women who are unable to bear a child. I did not menstruate for many years. That didn't make me less of a woman because I could not. And even
right.
when I was told that I couldn't have children, even though I did have children, even though I was told I didn't have children, I didn't feel less
Right.
of a woman because I couldn't bear children. But I'm just wondering, what is this? What she's trying to do? Just listen at her comments, is that she wants to say that trans women are different from biological women, and they have different struggles, and that should be acknowledged. How do you feel about that?
Right. I mean, it's. I think it's straight just being uninformed. Like I thought I was, hot shit about queer queer rights and queer information when my best friend came out as gay to me. And then we had conversations, and then I got to know other queer people, and I was like, oh, yeah, you ain't all that, honey. So, and actually, I woke up from being a JW when I was 15, and I openly say that I'm a gender since I am like 22, 23, something like that. So it's not a it's a recent development in my life that I realized, oh no, actually I'm a gender. I just don't feel attached to my gender, to how I physically look. I You could change the length of my hair overnight. You could change my genital settings overnight, and would I be shocked? Yeah, but I would not mind. I would not be like, oh my god, I'm not a woman anymore. Like, I don't feel attached to femininity or masculinity. I think I can embody both whenever and however I please. And that's basically what being a gender is, not being particularly attached to gender expression. An important note is that gender and sex are different. Gender is your behavior, gender is your expression, like say wearing makeup, wearing skirts, wearing high heels, you know, the social construct that you have. That's gender.
Hmm.
Looking feminine or masculine, that's gender. Sex is the chromosomes. That's the genes. That's the menstruation, the womb, the penis, that's sex. So she actually does not know, I guess, that gender and sex are not the same thing. And that's a very important separation that people need to make. And also, uh, I just want to shout out Daniel Radcliffe, aka Harry Potter
Right.
himself, who actually wrote an article about this for the Trevor Project. Can you flash the Trevor Project, please? If you have
Sure.
it up.
Before we actually go there, I want to acknowledge some of the comments that are here. Radcliffe actually, in addition to his article yesterday, linked something that I have been actually asking for. So it's kind of cool that he linked this. This is what you're saying here, a guide to the Travel Project, but a guide to being an ally to transgender and non-binary youth. Not only did he go out of his way to write an article about in
Right.
rebuttal to what she was saying, but he actually went out to link that particular guide, which is kind of cool because if you're a person like me who don't know where to go, uh, this is actually talking about what you touched on, sex and gender. What's the difference? There
Right.
are some people on Twitter, before we go to the project here, who actually agree with her. Um,
Of course there are.
this guy really actually surprised me because of the fact of his I mean his comments. And the fact that he's verified on Twitter, I couldn't find it. I think I'll find it a little later. But basically, he was saying that JK Rowling is right. Uh, but at the same time, if you don't know the difference between sex and gender, then you'll always make that mistake,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
it's not about what's between your legs as opposed to what's
yeah,
between your ears.
and also it's an important thing to say that just because you have um queer friends, it doesn't make you an ally. Because
Right.
guess what? You can have all the queer friends or all the black friends or female friends in the world, but that won't make you an ally unless you stand up and say, "Yo, my dude, that shit right there, uh-uh, that's bad, that's incorrect, and that's actually harmful to people of color, of queer people, and all that." And that's the Trevor Project. That's actually a crisis foundation for queer youth. They have a suicide chat and a hotline. And to my knowledge, they also help with sheltering. So
Yeah. I guess I didn't realize the screen share wasn't on. I wanted to actually show the article that he had
yeah,
linked to his article yesterday. I think it's great that he didn't feel like he couldn't speak out on this.
yeah,
Sometimes
and
when you work with people and you get a certain amount
right,
of notoriety within Hollywood, it makes it where you feel like you can't talk on certain issues, I guess.
right, and also I appreciate Daniel Radcliffe because he's a very outspoken atheist and he's very eloquent and very well mannered about it. He's not.
Hmm.
He's actually spoken about how why he's not religious on a few occasions and all that. And I like that. And actually, the Republican governor of Ohio attacked him for being an atheist and said, "What's wrong with that kid? Of course, Harry Potter would be an atheist." And anyway, he's like, "Yeah, well, I'm an atheist because it just happened that way." But he never attacks anyone. He's a peaceful dude, is all. So
So if you want to read more about the article that he linked, this is on the Travel Project right now. It talks about somebody already blogged about it. He responds to her tweets on gender identity, and the guide that he linked. Let me see if it'll come up here. Is this one here? A guide to being an ally to transgender and binary youth. Also,
right,
before we close out, we also always like to close out by saying that if you are a person, whether you're gender, I'm sorry, LGBTQIA, or in our case, we have a lot of suicides within the Jehovah's Witnesses. If you
hmm,
are feeling alone, you don't have to be alone. I mean, and you don't have to go through this alone. You could reach out to the Suicide Prevention Hotline at 800-273-8255, and they can talk you through it. There is also here in the States a chat function. If you're a person that don't really like to talk on the phone, you can chat about your issues and challenges, and somebody on the other end
right.
will be listening and waiting to help for you. Did you have any closing thoughts, Molly?
Yeah, I'm going to be a petty little bitch right now because I see one comment and I did not address it I because I wanted to wait for a proper moment to do it. But no, by the way, I'm not scared of sex. I'm repulsed by sex. It doesn't interest me. It doesn't matter to me. I don't want it. I don't need it. Actually, I'm the happiest when I'm single and left alone. I'm happy living with my two rabbits, having fun with my friends, and not getting hit on. I actually prefer to avoid that. I don't like it. I don't like sexual attention being on me. I'm just like, no, thank you.
I think it's great that we have people from Jehovah's Witnesses, Christians, people from all walks of life that kind of gravitate towards our stream. So don't take. I mean, go
By
ahead
the
and.
way,
Oh, here we go. Wait a minute, you got to flip it up, right? Hey, you guys, before we leave, we just want to let you know that we have a Pride. We're going to be celebrating Pride all month. But at the same time, we have a special episode of Duncan Religion coming up this Saturday. We are going to be comparing the Path episodes. The Path is a series that is on Hulu. If you're not familiar with it, it talks about an imaginary cult of Myerism. And in it, we will be comparing it with our challenges and struggles as Jehovah's Witnesses and the Jehovah's Witness religion. So make sure you look out for that. Also, June 28th, we have a big prize show on TGT. So
Mhm.
make sure you look out for that as well. Duncan also has a Patreon, right, Molly? We
yeah.
have a Patreon now. So you want to tell it?
And
Go ahead. I'm
also,
sorry.
I'm so excited
Yeah.
about the past review because
Yeah.
I left school just a bit ago. Like, I am not a teenager anymore, so it has been a while. And now that we are analyzing a series like we are doing with the pet, I finally managed to engage and rev up my old literature analysis freak. Like, those memes when it's like the curtain was blue and the student is like the curtain was fucking blue, and then the student and the teacher is like the curtain's blueness represents how the author was feeling a sea of depression and loneliness. That's how I was watching this series. So I'm sorry, you're gonna get a lot of tangents,
It's a good show. I think.
and I
Go ahead.
did manage to drag the Bible into it, y'all. So
It's not going to just be me and Molly. We're going to actually have a round table of other people who are actually looking at the series based on the character that was chosen for them. So it will be a good series. Also, outside of the Patreon, make sure you go ahead and support. We are in the process of getting episodes up, and we're going to be actually recording an episode pretty soon. Also,
right,
outside of TGT or the Glass Table having their Pride special, we are actually
and I
going to
will.
have our own Pride special here on Duncan Religion
Right.
on June
And
30th.
by the way, if anyone wants to check out my YouTube channel, I'm gonna be, now that I'm done with my mental health awareness rantings and ravings, kinda, sorta. You never know, because I'm a
Right.
depressed motherfucker. But anyway, I will do mostly pride related content on my YouTube channel, and once the Duncan Religion review of the pet is done, or I guess in a few days, I will review it solo as well, because I know we won't have time to go into all of my tangents and rants and ravings about the symbolism and what I noticed, and so I'm gonna do that as well.
And you
And
guys, if
I'm
you want to
gonna.
look out for my channel, the XJ Dub
Oh
Cafe, which is
yeah,
actually changing the name really soon, we are interviewing a person who is from the LGBTQIA community that will talk about her struggles as a PMO growing up, or sorry, his struggle as a PMO growing up as in the Jehovah's Witness religion. And I guess if I had to plug something for myself, I guess the only other thing that I am personally doing is I'm on a weight loss journey. So I'm working on a voice
oh,
over for that right now. And as far as theology, I plan to do well, I've been working on a video to talk about how um ho- for pride, homosexuality and breaking the chains and how to be
right.
an ally. So hopefully Molly can help me with that. It is a
Of course, I
journey.
love your channel, by the way. I love your live streams. It's always so good. You're
Girl, you know
so
I love your
funny. You're
channel.
so
I'm always
smart, and
I'm always
so
posting your channel because your last Mr. Health Awareness one and the one that got a lot of attention too, the one that you did the parody of the Jehovah's Witnesses. Was that?
yeah. I well, first off, I got like 115 views, which is for my YouTube channel with 66 subscribers last I checked. Interestingly enough,
good.
though, after I posted my mental health video, I lost 2 subscribers. So, fuck you.
And we have been concentrating on mental health all month. So what we're gonna do, Molly and I have a new outro that we're gonna be using all month. So we guys want to take a look at it. Let us know what you think in the comments. And as always, we are dunking religion, harmful dogma, and what? Indoctrination, right? Combating indoctrination. Yeah, we're working on our tagline. Yeah, you guys.
Bye,
See you
everyone.
later.